Welcome to the 12th episode of Rodin Pass, Urban Explosion. In this episode we have three main goals to make the city grow explosively, tripling its population capacity. First, we need to keep approval above 75% to attract new families more quickly. Second, we'll design the central square, which will host a great marketplace and become the city's epicenter. And finally, we'll urbanize the entire central area with dozens of new houses, allowing us to reach a population of over 500. And in this episode we'll be joined by Beethoven's famous 9th Symphony. Let's go! In the previous episode we revolutionized food production in the new city, ensuring it can support hundreds of new residents. In this one we'll step on the gas and build dozens of new houses to make an explosive demographic boom possible. To begin, we want to attract families more quickly, and for that we need to keep approval above 75%. Let's get to it. Looking at the approval indicators, we have two things to improve. On one hand, the diversity of clothing products, and on the other, the availability of beer. As for clothing, when we rebuilt the workshop district, we forgot the tannery. We'll need it both for the leather itself and to start producing shoes, which will boost approval. As for beer, we'll start by upgrading the tavern, mostly for aesthetics rather than capacity, and also begin importing barley. Since importing barley is quite expensive, we'll balance it out by improving exports of vegetables and apples. We assign workers to the tannery, which will have a good supply of hides thanks to the rich hunting ground, and will also expand some backyards with goats, which passively provide hides and meat. We built a brewery and a showmaker's workshop in these level 2 houses. Also a few chicken coops to produce top quality organic eggs. One horse more to improve trading efficiency. We assign workers to the malt house so they can process barley and get the brewery running. As you can see, the only approval penalties we are carrying are from past months. In the current version of the game, past events still weigh heavily on approval, but it looks like in the next update, past events will matter less. Personally, I think that's the right call. And now that we've started producing beer, it's time to distribute it in the tavern. We expand the stables. Also a granary and a warehouse. The amount of resources the city manages keeps increasing, so logistics must be reinforced accordingly. We've reached the stock limit of 50 shoes, which I set in the showmaker's workshop. I do this to prevent leather from running out, since it's also a needed good in the marketplace. We reinforce the markets with more workers for the granary and warehouse. While waiting for approval to stabilize, let's take a look at how things are going in the south of Rodin Pass. Even with hardly any attention, its 500 residents show nearly 100% approval, with plenty of food stocks and charcoal surpluses that just keep growing. Just with the charcoal produced in the south, we could easily supply this and the other regions. And it's always a pleasure to enjoy the views even on rainy days. We assign more workers to extract clay and iron to clear the deposit, free up the land, and reassign the workers to other tasks. With the city's constant growth, fuel consumption keeps rising, so we'll look for another profitable trade with the south to get more charcoal. Thinking ahead, I know the city will produce huge amounts of meat and sausages, so I set up a trade, charcoal in exchange for sausages. Remember back in episode 4 when we built this industry wonder? Without a doubt, one of the keys to Rodin Pass success. Back to sausages. For every unit of meat and salt, you produce 2 sausages. It's like turning your salt surplus into meat, a very efficient way to stretch your food production. And the south of Rodin Pass has plenty of salt, thanks to its deep mines, so we'll trade that with the new city. The question is, what to trade for salt? Thinking ahead, we'll soon build a large pasture with about 200 sheep, boosting meat production and generating lots of wool. We'll then trade that wool for salt. Honestly, I would like the option to send goods for free between regions. But I have to admit, this trade system forces you to look for synergies and make use of each region's surpluses. In the end, it's kind of fun to rack your brain over these exchanges. And looking at approval, we move forward a month and see it staying above 75%. Objective achieved. Now that the city will grow quickly, let's take the first step in urbanizing it, designing the central square, which will host a great market and become the core of the city's housing area. But just as I start planning, the Baron shows up to annoy us again. This time we'll get rid of him quickly. See the highlighted area under the magnifier? As I told you in previous episodes, if we want the conflict to end in just one battle, we have to let the enemy approach it. Then we'll get a notification that the battle has started, and if we win there, the whole conflict ends in one decisive victory. That's the notification I was talking about. Now it's time to crush the enemy. The crossbowmen tear through the enemy infantry. Beautiful to watch. They basically handed us a sandwich. Let's eat them up. Done. Quick and clean. Okay, so let's get back to our main task, designing the square. The first thing I do is visualize the shape and what I want the future square to look like. I'm considering a few ideas, but the one I like the most is a square plaza between 4 blocks, with all buildings facing the market. And of course, this means a healthy dose of Road Simulator. You were waiting for it. As you can see, I'm checking the viability of those housing plots, which I want oriented towards the square. I'm tempted to draw diagonals in the corners, but after several trials that I'll spare you, I'll keep it simple. Place 4 identical buildings to form a square, with roads running along their perimeter. I also want to remove the side paths from the main avenue and just keep the cross formed by the 2 thicker perpendicular roads. That's it. Now we will start planning the houses around the square. The idea is that all the houses around the square are oriented towards it. The problem is, this complicates the layout of neighboring plots, but we will find a way to make everything fit perfectly. Here, for example, we'll need to draw another path so all houses have access. This path creates an unusual plot, but in the end it adds to the city's organic feel. For me, it's that balance between the initial plan we made back then and these changes that arise on the fly, adding diversity and asymmetry to an otherwise orderly design, but that's also a matter of taste. I try to avoid losing too many backyards, though it's not a big deal since very few plots don't have them, but if I can avoid it, better. Problem solved. To keep urbanizing this other area, we need to move the marketplace, and for that we have to design a new one. Not an easy task since it needs to be one of the city's most distinctive areas, and we don't want it to look sloppy. After giving it some thought, let's try a concentric design with market stalls surrounding the square and several central gardens. Sometimes I've thought a grid overlay in the interface could help align buildings, but then it would turn into cities' skylines with everything straight and tidy. In fact, I tend to build a little bit that way, and it would probably make my designs too rigid, so I actually prefer they don't add it, keeping this freehand city building style. In tight places, things get trickier, especially if I want enough stalls so it doesn't feel like an empty square. Here I want 3 stalls to fit, and I won't stop until I make it happen. There it is. At least the last section was easy. But here we see significant asymmetries. Anywhere else it wouldn't matter, but not in the damn center of the square. So let's fix it. We will inevitably need to adjust some paths. Much better. Now the square has the look I was aiming for. We can now demolish the old market so new stalls appear in the central one, and with that the square design is complete. Objective achieved. Now it's time to keep urbanizing around the market and the rest of the central area. Here I see it will be tricky to properly urbanize the block without another road crossing it. And after probably too many tweaks, this section is also urbanized. Now for the last quadrant. We can't continue here until all those resources are moved. Nor here, since we've run out of logs. We'll plant flags in these plots. Just like in the southern district, we use them to simulate gardens, since they're beautiful when they bloom. And although there won't be fields in this region, we'll need a farmhouse to manage the many flax gardens here, even more than in the southern district. There looks great. And a few bonus gardens. Here I almost get carried away with decorating and gardening the lake, but not now, that's for another episode. We reinforce wood extraction, which is holding us back a little. This deposit is depleted, so we can dismantle it and free up workers. On the other hand, I see we're short on fuel, which in theory we were trading with the south. And then I realized there's a chain issue. At the start of the episode, we set up wool for salt to make sausages, and then sausages for charcoal. And here's the problem, our new city doesn't produce wool yet, so we don't get salt, so we don't make sausages, so we don't trade them for charcoal. Later, these trades will make sense, but for now we need to adjust them to the goods we actually have. So let's replace wool with fish, of which we still have surpluses in the new city. We also need a butcher to start producing sausages. There it is. What a beautiful apple orchard. Every year, as the trees grow, it will produce more and more apples. Thousands annually. Now that the area is cleared, let's finish urbanizing the entire central zone. Here I'm playing Tetris to make sure both plots have backyards. This game has made me realize I might have a touch of OCD. Once we've built everything I've planned for this episode, there will be capacity for about 500 people. Same as the southern district. but one major section will still be left to urbanize. I estimate that at full size, with upgraded housing, we'll have room for 800 to 1000 residents. Altogether, the combined population of all regions, once we finish the series, will exceed 2000 inhabitants. Sausage production is starting to roll, though not at full speed yet, so the charcoal trade isn't flowing as it should. In the meantime, since we have plenty of workers, we'll reinforce it with some local firewood production. And now that we have lots of logs again, let's keep filling in the remaining gaps in these plots. Another little path here. And in this unusual plot, we'll place some uniquely designed houses to add variety. There we go. Look at that, we've reached 100% approval. Wonderful. We continue urbanizing this section, and we're almost done with everything I had planned. Again, we're short on logs. Our timber industry turned out a bit small for such a wild housing expansion. There it is. And with those houses, I'm satisfied with the explosive urban expansion in which we've practically tripled the city's population capacity. Objective achieved. And although it's still halfway developed, it's already starting to match its southern sister city. 2 sister cities, and soon a third, that will dominate this mighty mountain valley like never before in Manor Lords. And with this, the new city consolidates as an urban center, and we're one step closer to civilizing the whole valley. Which means, in the next episode, it's time to expand once again to the north and claim its fertile region, where we'll build a prosperous farming town with vast fields. And once the town is developed, we'll be able to design the fortress network on the north side, protecting the entire valley from any threat, wherever it may come from. Rodin Pass will become an impregnable megacity. So, what did you think of the urban growth in the new city? If you have any ideas or suggestions, I would love to read them in the comments. See you in the next episode. Manor, Ridiculor, will be able to design the network. No. Once that town is developed, we'll be able, so not disabled.